Morning. I'm Marty Inkrot, President of the POA Board. Thank you, Joe, for reminding me to say that. This is a presentation of the budget by Chet and Judy with input from the Finance Advisory Committee. So the way this will work is I'm going to open it up to Steve as treasurer of the board to make some opening comments. Then he'll turn it over to Chet and Judy to present the budget. Then we'll have Brad Spiegel come in to make comments. He's the head of the Finance Advisory Committee to make comments from the Finance Advisory Committee and then offer their recommendation. Then we will open it up for board question and comment. And after that, we'll open it up for public question and comment. So that's how we'll approach this today. And with that, I will turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Marty. I'm Steve Schneider. I'm the treasurer of the board. A few comments. First of all, I want to welcome you to the 2024 budget presentation. And as most of you are aware, the board has made some modifications to the budget process this year, as we made modifications last year. And the modification was basically made in September after the board had a budget workshop with the FAC for 2 days. And we sat there and looked at the amount of detail, scrutiny, review performed by the FAC and the staff of Chet, that after 2 days, and also the work that went in prior to that by the directors and the advisory committees for each director, I've never seen so much scrutiny of a budget since I used to work a long time ago. So it was unanimous. The board decided that the previous pattern of having a 2-day public workshop was not needed. You had directors working on budgets since August. There's been hundreds and hundreds of hours put in by volunteers and staff putting this budget together, and it's probably the best budget I've ever seen in the 7 years I've been here. So I believe I speak for the board members. I'd like to thank Chet, your staff, the FAC, all the advisory committees for all the efforts you've put in over the last 3 months, because without that effort, we wouldn't be here today. So other than that, I believe that's all my opening comments, so I'm going to turn it back over to Chet to get on with the review.
Good morning, everyone. The only correction I would like to make to Steve's comment is that I was there to guide and direct. The work was done by all the other people that he actually mentioned, and the staff went over and above in understanding and really taking ownership, I guess is the right word, for the budget. So let's get started. And I'm going to do my best to sit down and talk. As you all know, I usually stand and talk, and I'm going to try and sit and talk today and see if we can get through this. So our overreaching goal is to maintain and enhance the community's assets and amenities. And that's pretty much where we started. And our first goal, given to us by the reserve study, is to fund the reserves by $8 to $10 million every year, somewhere between $8 and $10 million. So that's our overreaching goal, and whatever we do, we have to end up there. So this year, through the budget process, we will be contributing $9.9 million. Now, to get to this point, we had to make some changes and some variations and go through several gyrations of how do we get to the $8 to $10 million. And where we came up with is a 5% increase. And the reason we came to a 5% increase is because that's the wall that we had to stop at. Our documents give us either the highest CPI at a specific time during the year or 5% increase. CPI was close to 5 at that point. It can be debated where it was, but it doesn't really matter. For us to reach this number for our budget contribution to reserves, we had to go to 5%. And I'm fairly certain that all of you, when you go to the grocery store, realize things are a little more expensive than just 5% since the last time you bought eggs, as an example, or fuel or anything else. So we actually were fighting against a lot of different input on percentages of increase, and different departments had different percentages of increase, but 5% is where we got to. So the only reason I bring that up is I don't want you to think that we arbitrarily said, well, 5% is the highest we can go, so that's what we're going to do. That wasn't the tack at all. We had to try and find our happy place in being able to get the numbers to the right spot. So to that end, the next part would be to maintain assets, things like rebuilding Tenassi, water and sewer maintenance, which is an ongoing process, road maintenance, which is the gift that keeps on giving, as they say. Road maintenance is forever. Now we need to enhance our amenities. That's another part of that. And we've brought in food service as a new department for the community to manage. How we approached it, I've talked about that a little bit, but let's look at the items that I have here. The first one, which was a unique process for almost all of the staff, was to go to a zero-based budget for both expenses and capital expenditures. And what that means is, or I'll rephrase that, there's a lot of definitions. What I meant by that is that we take every line item to zero, and then you have to sell me on why you're spending that. It's not taking last year's costs and adding a percentage to it. You've got to take it to zero and sell me on why that's the number you want to use. And that's what everybody did. And it forced them to truly understand their budget, where the money comes from and where the numbers come from. Then we wanted to go out and say, okay, we think we're in the right place. How do we compare? What's the competitive market to analyze our fees? Every department had to go down and find some areas where they can compare and say, are we over or above what everybody else is doing? And in some cases, I went out to, at a national level, what are other properties doing? How are other properties managing these particular functions? And what numbers did they come up with? And so at that level, we also took us back to our 5%. The last thing on the topic in terms of the POA staff was they all had to reduce their subsidy. And so in every department, whatever they came up with, it had to reduce the subsidies that we paid for 2023. 2024, it had to go down. From the community, basically, as was mentioned by Steve, we had over 100 board and advisory committee members contributing to this process. And many of them put 56 hours or more into the review, the scrutiny, the study of this, and everybody had a voice. All of those people had a voice. Nobody was kept away from saying, I disagree with that, or I do agree with that, or have you guys thought about this? So it was collaborative in almost every aspect it could be. So the high level of the 2024 budget is our revenue will be $40.9 million. That number also includes the new food service department, which is bringing in a significant amount of number. I believe it's 4.6. I'll get corrected probably on that, but I think it's $4.6 million into revenue. Cost of services is going to be $7.4 million. Expenses will be $25.8 million, and again, that number includes food service expenses that have been brought into our budget this year. If you subtract the cost of services and expenses, you come to our P&L contribution, which is $7.7 million. If you add back in the depreciation, you come to our cash contribution of $9.9 million for the reserves contribution. Then, in terms of our capital expenditures for this year, it's at $9.6 million. So our overall net contribution to the reserves is $0.3 million. Okay? So many of you have heard me tell this story, but I think it's important that I repeat it, and hopefully people will begin to understand it. And it goes like this. You're out on a traveling, and it's the middle of the night, and you're lost. And so you stop to pull out your map to figure out where you are. And while you're looking at your map, some guy walks up and taps on the window and says, hey, I don't mean to scare you, but you stopped in the middle of a train track, and you may want to move. It's coming through here in about 5 minutes. Now, is that person fear-mongering, or is he actually trying to help you out? And that's the goal here. I'm trying to help the community out and show them what's coming. So as we look at our reserve cash flow, there's several areas that I want to point out. 2024, again, we are, and that center line, one of the things I want to point out is the center line where it says reserve cash contribution. As you see, this year we put in 9.9. I don't know what those other budgets are going to come out to, but we're going to keep the 9 million because it's in the middle. 8 to 10 is what the reserve study says we're supposed to be doing. So we're keeping 9 million, and it is an arbitrary number. We may be able to put in more than that or less than that, but that's our mean. As we go through that, we've anticipated out over 5 years what we're going to spend capital on. And we've projected that out to 2028. And as you can see, some years are a lot more money than others. But it's 2027 I want you to look at. If we continue down the road we are on right now with all the expenses that we have, in 2027, our ending balance in our reserves will be approximately what it was back in 2016, $3.3 million. That's not good. That is the train I'm talking about. That puts us in a very, very precarious business. And one of those things that most people don't think about is our reserve budget is what gives us the ability to borrow money. And at this point, at 3.3 million, banks probably are not going to be interested in loaning us money. At 18 million we are today, we could go and get a loan on a signature. And I'm not recommending we do that, by the way, so don't jump to that conclusion. Anyway, that's where we are with that. Now, to put it in a much larger perspective, over those 5 years, we're planning on spending $59.4 million. The lion's share, as I've spoke about earlier, is water and sewer, $31.6 million. Now, this number has grown, and again, I'm unfortunately speaking as being able to read a document, not that I was here to provide more input, but since 2020, that number has continued to grow. I believe it started out somewhere around 6 million, then it went to 13 million, then it went to 16 million, then it went back down to 13 million, and now it's back up to 31 million over the next 5 years. And it's because as we do these studies with engineers who are looking at our situation, the problems we're having, the age of our community and our infrastructure, they're advising us, these are the trains that are coming and you need to prepare for it. Now, can I guarantee you it's going to be 31.6 million? Probably not. But I can guarantee it's going to be close to that. And by the way, not for nothing, the numbers that I'm quoting you here are today's numbers. They're based on today's money, not what it will be in 5 years from now. So that's another kind of concern that I have. Public Works is going to spend $8 million over that 5 years. Now, when I say Public Works, everybody tries to throw water and sewer into that pile, and I understand why. When I'm talking about Public Works, in this case, I'm talking about building maintenance, any kind of other structural maintenance that we have to do, land moving or any kind of repair to areas of washouts, trails, all those kind of things. Well, trails is a different department. But anyway, anything that has to do with anything but water and sewer. Roads, yeah, sorry, thank you. I knew I was missing something. Golf is planning on spending $7.8 million over the next 5 years. Tenacity Rebuild, $7 million is what it currently stands at. Parks and Rec are going to spend $2 million. Now, as we look at all of these things, all I can tell you is most of these numbers have been beat up. These are not just, well, let's spend that. Everyone has been argued over. Do you really need that? Tell me why you need that. Explain to me what's the business case for us to have that. So none of these numbers are, for lack of a better word, a guess. Now, I have to be honest in that same sentence and say, it's a guess for me because I look to engineers to tell me what they think it's going to be. Again, in today's dollars, that's what we think it's going to be. By the time we get there, I don't know. An example of why I say that is that in years past, 2022, we talked about putting in a whole set of pump systems that would require a significant amount of money and time, and it would change how we had to hire employees to be able to maintain those pump systems. And then we came up with a better idea, put in a raised water tower. That's what I'm anticipating and hoping for, that as we move forward, we'll find a better way. But as the engineers have drawn it out for us today, that's our number. Okay, you can go. Next one. All right. Judy, you want to take us through these?
Okay, we're going to talk about the numbers at kind of the 30,000 foot level. Just remember that you have all of the details in your packet if you want further information. So when we look at these numbers, they're all up from 2023, and food services is obviously a very big contributor to all of this. The rising cost of water is also a factor in both the revenue and the cost of sales numbers, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So let's start taking a look at some of these numbers. I think, is there the next slide? Okay. So as I mentioned, revenue is projected to be $40.9 million. That's up $9 million from 2023. Obviously, again, I will say the key driver to this is I'm going to jump to the second one first. Food service revenue is projected to be $4.7 million. And again, that's certainly a big number, but we have to remember that the industry standards support that this has to cover at least 90% of this number has to cover the cost of food, staff, and overhead for that operation. We are anticipating a negligible return this year, as it's the first year, and we want to try some new things to improve the community's dining experience. Looking back at the assessments now, they are budgeted to generate $14.6 million, which is up 5%. As Chet mentioned earlier, we needed to raise the assessments 5% in order to accomplish our goals. Looking at water and sewer, they are together budgeted to generate about $8 million in 2024, and that revenue number is driven by the higher cost of water and also a budgeted 5% increase in consumption. 2024 revenue is up about $2.7 million over the 2023 forecast, which is roughly a 50.9% increase. Golf, recs, and docks are all budgeted to generate a total of about $6.1 million, and that includes a 5% rate increase in most areas, but not all. It wasn't straight across the board, along with some increases in membership. I'm going to skip the cost of sales for now because Chet's going to talk about that after we get through going through the expenses and give us a little more information on the cost of water. I want to look at our salaries and benefits. The total for 2024 is $12.6 million, and that really looks like a big number. That's up $2.7 million from 2023. That's 27%. But again, that includes the cost of our food service wages and benefits, which are about $2 million of that total, which is 74% of the total increase. Food service headcount is budgeted to include 60 full-time and 50 part-time employees. And let's remember that salaries represent 39% of our total expenses. They are our greatest asset as well. Components of the increase include a 5% raise pool, which was budgeted for merit raises. That doesn't mean everyone will get a 5% raise. We just created the pool. Our headcount will be relatively flat, excluding the food service increase of about 110 people. Market adjustments were also budgeted for several individuals, and Chet will also try to talk some more about that for us, and I'll actually let you talk about that now, the 5% raise pool.
Yes, one of the things we did, back to what I mentioned earlier and how we approach these things, is I went out for a national average to, it was approximately 340 different properties throughout the United States, and this is done by a separate research group who goes out and looks at salaries every year and what the increases are overall per community. And the average came out to be 5%. And anecdotally, Fairfield Glade, a sister community of ours, also went up 5%. But there were some that went up 9%, and there were some that only went up 3%. So as you balance these things out across that group, 5% was the mean, and that is how we came up with that particular number. And as in that same study, they went out and looked at the individual tasks and put costs around those as well. And so when I talk about merit increases, not merit increases, market adjustments. When I talk about market adjustments, that's where we came up with those numbers. What are people being paid in other places, to include Tennessee, but across the nation, what's the average salary for those people? And of course, we have to take into consideration places like Florida and California are far overstated compared to ours and those kinds of things. And so as we look at that, that's where these market adjustments came from. And the areas that there were some market adjustment was in the administrative staff, in golf, and also in Parks and Rec. And the golf, all of these raises and these rates has one function, and that is to be sure that our employees know that they're getting paid a fair wage and that they are appreciated and that we respect what they bring to the party, so to speak. One of the things that I have been fighting, and my staff has been fighting, and HR has been a great help with this, is in 2020, between 2022 and 23, we have reduced our attrition, or turnover, whatever word makes more sense to you, by 55%. And one of the reasons is behind that is people want to stay here. As we get further into this, you'll see that I've also asked all the departments to increase their training schedule and set aside money for training in each department. The reason for that is it makes people become more dedicated to your community because they feel they are appreciated, and we're training them to give us the best service that they can. So those are the several areas that we've worked on, and to put kind of a number around that 55% reduction, every person you lose, whether it's by them walking out the door or you helping them out the door, is 5 weeks approximately of salary. And so by reducing that by 55%, that's something that is money back in the coffers for us to do other things. Okay.
Okay. Back to salaries and benefits. I'll tell you a little bit about the benefits. Benefits, that category includes medical insurance, workers' comp, and payroll taxes. And one of the biggest components of that is obviously our medical insurance. The expectation is that 45 of the 60 full-time anticipated food service employees will take our benefits. So that's going to be a driving force in increasing that number. If you can look at the slide there. The rates for our existing policy went up 7% this year due to great negotiating by our HR director. That percentage increase was originally projected to be 15%. So thank you very much, Russell, for that. So beyond the wages and benefits, let's look at all of our remaining operating expenses. The total operational expenses for food services are $13.2 million. With food services in the total is $13.2 million. This is an increase from 2023 of $1.8 million, which is a 15.6% increase. Excluding food service, the overhead from that new amenity, the 2024 total is $12.3 million, and this is a $0.9 million increase from 2023, which is really only an 8% increase if we are excluding food services. There are 4 primary drivers of this increase, and I'm going to discuss each of these with you, and all of the numbers I'm going to talk about exclude the food service portion. They are personnel costs, operating supplies, services, and insurance. The personnel costs for 2024 are $0.4 million, which is, the slide says 100%. It's really up about 59% if we're using the exact numbers. Quoting these to you in fractions of millions skews that a little bit. But that category, personnel costs, includes training, travel, uniforms, and HR expenses. Training and related travel are up, they total $0.1 million. And again, the importance of training was emphasized by our CEO, and that improves the commitment to the POA, which statistically saves us money when they don't leave and go elsewhere. Investment in people is our greatest asset, and together with training, we are looking for ways to quantify and qualify our customer service. This is our business. Looking at operating supplies, this includes small tools, gas and diesel that we use to operate our equipment, autos and trucks, horticultural supplies, and a variety of other supplies. Total in '24 is $1.3 million. That's up $0.1 million, 8.3%. The biggest components to the operating supplies beyond the food service are primarily the horticultural supplies for the golf courses. That's 29% of the total operating supplies, fertilizer, weed killer, et cetera. Services, again, without food services, are projected to be $1.6 million, up $0.4 million, which is 33%. Expenses included in services are contract labor, legal and professional, and accounting and collection services. Primary driver of this increase is our contract labor, which is $1 million for 2024, and that represents 55% of 2024 total services. Contract labor includes, for the sewer system, $0.4 million for remediating significant sewer line breaks. Water has $0.2 million, and that's for backflow testing and emergency repair budget that is in there. Public Works has our mowing contract. It's $0.1 million, and that's to mow 220 lane miles of roads, power lines, easements, et cetera. And maintenance also has a piece in there that covers our HVAC, elevator, and fire extinguisher contracts. Last but not least, our taxes, license, and insurance category. Total budget for 2024 is $0.9 million. That's up $0.1 million. Insurance pretty much represents that entire increase. Our property insurance is up due to the Tanasi fire, and marine insurance is up nationwide. We were, again, thanks to some tough, hard work by our HR and our special insurance committee, able to reap about $70,000 in savings over our initial quote that happened in August of 2023, using our new agent, Kate Russell, and we'll hopefully be able to renegotiate some additional coverages this coming spring in March or April, and our special insurance committee will be meeting with them again at that time. So we're working really hard to try to get those costs back down a little bit. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chet to discuss the cost of water.
Yeah, this is one that I'll just say it out loud. Y'all need to buckle your seatbelts. This is the largest increase we will have this year in any of the fees. And it is a 52% increase in the cost of water. What does that really mean? That means that this year we bought water wholesale at $2.30 per 1,000 gallons. Next year we will be buying wholesale water at $3.50 for every 100 gallons. And
1,000 gallons.
I'm sorry, 1,000, I said that. Let's try again.
Thousands or millions or tens? Say it again, please.
Yes, happy to. This year, we purchased water at $2.30 per 1,000 gallons. Next year, we will be purchasing water at $3.50 per 1,000 gallons. LUB is the one who has raised their rates. We buy water, just to clarify a few things, we buy water from both TAS, which is Monroe County's water system, and LUB. TAS is not going up this year or currently anyway, on their water. They currently stand at $2.80 per 1,000 gallons.
So I'm probably, and I'm sure you're going to cover this in a minute, but that is not unique to us, is it?
No, in fact, LUB is actually giving us the lowest rate they're going to charge next year. We're at the bottom of the pile. There are other people, if you look at their numbers, and I don't want to bore you with this because it's like a 37-page water study. It pretty much plays out to ours went up in their world. Our relational pay-in to the cost for LUB is 68%. The rest of the communities, both inside and outside Loudoun, the city of Loudoun, and then in the county, all the other commercial units like Watts Bar and some of those, all of those went up to 81% of their cost covers. So we are still the cheapest person being charged by LUB, but they've gone up significantly. And their story is, and I can't argue with it, is they have put in significant new infrastructure, both a new water treatment plant, and they're in the process of building a new water purification system to deliver water to the county. So they have lots of infrastructure costs going in. And of course, we have to begin to fund our 31 millions in water and sewer over the next 5 years. So those are things that we've had to take into consideration of that cost. And even though we've kept the operations in terms of staff and material and trucks and all those things pretty much flat from this year to next year, in general, the expenses are. So now let's go to the page that you really care about. Here's what water is going to look like. This year, you are paying for 2,000 gallons, the flat fee is $58.67. Next year, it will be a 36% increase. For 2,000, you'll be paying $79.82. That's approximately 50% of the community. The next group is the 5,000. Currently, if you're using 5,000 gallons, you're paying approximately $103.66. Next year, you'll be paying $141.65. This covers almost 80% of the community. If you're one of those people who loves to irrigate, even at a medium rate, you're going to be up into the $15,000 range, and your bill will go from $168.36 to $253.70. For those of you who are wild and crazy about how you use water, if you break into that anywhere around 50,000 gallons, and I know everybody's saying, well, that's silly, Chet, nobody does that. Wrong. There is at least a 5 to 10% group of people who are spending and using 50,000 gallons of water in a month, and they're watering every single day. To that point, their bill is going to go from $534 to $921. Now, one of the things I wanted you to understand about it, and if you remember last year, we had kind of a tiered structure. You got one cost at 2,000, you got another cost at 5,000, you got another cost at 15,000, excuse me. This year, we have the flat rate for 2,000, and that rate, as you go up, doesn't change until you broach the 15,000. And the reason for that is that we don't want to, I mean, and somebody brought this up, and it was a fair comment. It feels like you're punishing the people who are trying to maintain their lawns by irrigating and charging us more money. And the reality of it is that shouldn't be that case, because obviously we want our community to look the best it can be. So in setting these rates, we try to keep the rates flat up to 15,000, and that basically covers over 90% of the community to keep that in line. But like I said, I'm not happy about these numbers. Regrettably, these are numbers that are completely out of my control. And as an association, we just have to roll with it. One of the things, as a side note, I'm looking at, as I mentioned, we buy water from both TAS and LUB. Well, the percentage that we buy water from TAS is significantly lower than the water we buy from LUB. Both of those have contracts of minimum buys, right? You have to buy this much water from us, at the very least. Well, one of the things I'm trying to negotiate is for TAS to allow us to buy more water from them and kind of balance out our cost a little better. So far, those contracts are still in negotiations, but if I can, that's one of the goals we're working toward, is to try and balance out that cost. Okay. We've gone through it all. We've given you the bad and the good. We've showed you and told you what we wanted to talk about in terms of what's our goals, what was that final contribution to reserves, what is it we're trying to take care of, and why we're trying to take care of it. I hope you all realize this year that our goal was to do one thing and one thing only, give you the most comprehensive, well-balanced, and conservative budget we possibly could do under the circumstances that we have to do them in. One of the things I want to remind you is that in our documents, this is not driven by the board, nor is it driven by me. It is driven by our governing documents, and it is our fiduciary responsibilities. We must maintain, repair, and replace all of the amenities we have within the community. And that's our governing documents giving us those guidelines. That's what we've tried to accomplish this year in the process of building the budget for 2024. I've asked the chairman of the FAC to make his comments, since he's kind of been through the process with us, and his guidance has spoke to us about what we needed to do and didn't do, and give us guidance on where we could be more conservative and other things where we might have missed something. He's been a great help, is the bottom line. Brad, would you come up and say something for us, or talk to the crowd, let them know?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Spiegel. I'm chairman of the FAC. I'd like to just start off with a thank you to the staff, the departments, and all the advisory committee members. As Chet mentioned, 56 hours, you multiply that by well over 100 people, 100 property owners involved in this process, and it's truly a great commitment. On behalf of PSAC, we didn't have their members available, but if you haven't met that group of people, they are a group of talented engineers, and they have spent, again, numerous hours working with Jacobs Engineering, who is our outside consultant. They have given us the roadmap to what we need to do on both the freshwater side of the equation as well as the wastewater side of the equation. So everything coming out of our tanks and pumps and our pressurized systems. And it's a staggering big number when you get into what all is coming at us. But that is a group of talented engineers led by John Tierney as their chair, who really put their heart and soul into staring at our infrastructure and what we need to do. The other comment I'll make is when you think of our department heads, and you go through Casey and Wells and Golf, you go through Matt in Public Works, Simon in Rec, Beth with marketing and our development side of the equation, Mitzi in food service, Judy in the finance organization, and Russell in HR. This is a passionate group of people who truly want to deliver value to us as property owners. And some of the sessions that we have been through have been fist pounding on tables. They've been laughing at some big ideas. They've been reconciliation over what needs to take place and drive through these numbers. So just know that this organization's team really wants to deliver us value. Lots of big things happening this year with the Tenacity rebuild, the insourcing of food service. It makes some of these numbers look wacky when you look at them. Please look at the detail that's in the package. It is very clear by department what's happening on every element. Working with Judy as our new CFO, she has built models that bring back literally every dollar of revenue, every dollar of cost of sales, every dollar of every expense line, and she can tell you where those moving pieces are. So it gives me an extremely high confidence that you can go through, you can stare at these numbers, and there is an explanation behind each one of these assumptions. So in summary, I'd just like to say that, through this process, I believe it has been thorough. I believe it has been thoughtful. I believe it's realistic. Every single time a budget is done, I will promise you the paper it's printed on, it is now wrong. Because it's all built on assumptions, and it's all built on how we go to think about the process. For all of the input and all the assumptions we know today, it is realistic, and for that reason, I wanted to share with you that the Financial Advisory Committee recommends this budget for approval at the upcoming meeting next week. So, thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
So with that, couple things. You know, we keep mentioning this packet, that all present have it. Is it available online? Is it out there now? And where is it, Beth? Okay, could everybody hear you? Okay.
It's currently leaked in the chat on this YouTube video. It's also on the POA website, which is tellicovillagepoa.org, on the finance page under 2024 budget.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, Jim, do we have the new rate sheet that we can put up there so everybody can see it? And maybe Chet or Judy, if you just kind of want to take us through it.
As you can see, this is the assessment rates, and the change from 2023 to 24 will be $176.24 per month. That is a 5% increase, and that's showing how much money will be raised, I guess, in 2024. The 82,980 generates $14.6 million of total revenue.
Marty, were you talking
Anything you
about
wanna
the
say about
rates
that
for
one?
the user fees? Right,
User
yeah,
fee.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
here we
Okay,
go.
there we go.
Here's the golf rates. There's so many of them. We got the member rates, for daily, prepaid, and with guests with member and guests without member. And most of those are up 5%. Some of them are up by a different amount. If golf wants to talk about that, or if any.
Yeah,
we
it
can-
depends on what it is that you're looking at. If you, the average is 5%, some are more, some are less, but that's where it comes up to. Go ahead to the next screen.
There's,
The point of going to the next screen is golf goes on
to
forever.
get them all in.
Yeah.
I guess I just
Yeah, what do you
want to reinforce that these rates in this case were recommended by the Golf Advisory Committee. That's a question, right?
Yes, they were vetted by their committee.
And then the other committees as
And
we
then-
go through each of their rates.
Yes, yes. So these will all be put up during the board meeting next week for your approval, and they are all available for review. That's-
And they're all in your packet.
And they're all in your packet, yes. Parks and Rec, same thing. This was a 5% increase in rates, and they were also projecting I believe, a 3% increase in usage in terms of coming up with the total revenue on our financial statements. And they, again, have consulted with their committee. So that's a lot of people in the community, professionals in your community that have vetted and approved of these changes. ACC, theirs is not really.
Hasn't really changed.
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
Except for
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, the new street impact, yes, thank you, Steve. There's a new thing, it's a road impact fee, and it's $1,200 per home constructed. And we're projecting 158 new permits this year, and so that will be 158 times 1,200. It'll generate about 190,000, let me put it like that, in revenue for 2024.
And I think the reason this was put in, and everyone, both listening and here in the room, have either sent me an email or talked to me at least one point in time about all the damage that these large trucks do to our roads with all the building that we've got going on. And this is the way that we've tried in some way to get some income from that so that we're able to go back out and apply that to those roads.
Now, also, we have a program that we attempt to recover those damage fees currently, but this makes it much easier to recover the fees on the average. Some will, some won't, but this will be an upfront fee.
Yes. Public Works, the water rates, which Chet's already discussed, that you can see the change from 23 to 24, whereas there was an increase before at every level change. We've now flattened that out a bit, so from 2001 gallons up to 14,999, it would be $9 per gallon for that. And the sewer rates went up just a little bit from 28, per 1,000 gallons, yes, excuse me. Per gallon, you're gonna be
No,
per 1,000 gallons. The utility installation fee is going up from 12,000 to 13,100, and that's when we put the new tanks in the ground for new home builds each year. So again, that's going to be a little over, I think about 230 of those maybe this year. Boat slips, we increased the rate 5% from 23 to 24, and again, this is one of our scarcest resources, so we want to make sure we benchmarked and we're still in line with, what the market, we're under what market rates are, but we wanted to pull this lever a little bit and get some revenue out of that as well.
One of the reasons, though, is that actually in going up 5% was to be sure that we were trying to come as close as we could to cover the increase in insurance.
Yes.
Because boat slips all over across the United States, specifically in Tennessee, but across the United States, has had so much damage this last year that anything that's covered as a covered dock is almost triple what a regular dock is. And unfortunately, when they look at our docks, we tried to say, oh, well, let's divide our docks up. We don't have all covered docks. And the insurance company said, oh, no, you have 1,000 slips and they're all in the same boat. And so this really drove our costs up. And in the future, we'll have to keep looking at these and see how we're going to maintain them. And hopefully, we'll go a year without any big storms. But that's the liability. And yeah, I know. Good luck with that, Chet. But that's where the insurance was driven, because of roof caves in, it's double indemnity. You have to replace the roof and the boat it fell in on. So that's why that went up. And we've also put in a significant amount of money, and will be this coming year, by putting in a wave attenuator and some other things that will increase the value and the cost for docks.
And that wave attenuator is $400,000, and it's in the attachment under the capital plan.
Yes.
Yes, and that'll help reduce the damage to the docks and help maintain our asset.
And those other things are 64 kayak storage units that are on a piece of property in Kahiti that people have been paying deposit for, so we approved a big chunk of money for those other things too. Well, it's in the budget. You're right, Steve. I apologize.
Also, yeah, hasn't been approved yet. And also, for those who have kayaks, we did not increase the storage cost for kayaks this year at all. So it stayed the same, flat.
Next. Oh, that's the last one.
That's the last, that's the last few.
And in the attachment, there were comparisons done for golf rates, for rec rates, for the docks, to compare what we're charging in the proposed budget versus what the market is, so you'll have access to that. And then, I don't know if you have access to go back to the chart, which was the 5-year view of our contributions to the reserves and how they dropped to whatever it was, 5 million, 7 million?
3 million.
Yeah.
3 million and 27.
If you could put that chart back up there?
Yep. No, go back up. You were right there on it. There we go. That's it.
So when you take a look at the details in the packet and what's online, the net result is all those rate increases are required per the forecast in the budget to generate the 9.9 million. If those rates are not what's in the budget, that 9.9 million is a different number. And as you can see, we've assumed 9 million in the out years because we don't have detailed budgets for those out years as of today. But assuming that we have to make it happen, because you got to fund reserves 8 to 10 million, and that number's going to go up, because after you build Tenacity, you now have a $7 million asset that you're going to be consuming every year. Well, as you consume it every year, guess what? You got to fund reserves for the replacement value. So the 9 million basically is going to jump out in the out years, I predict, to 10 to 11, maybe 12. So as you do your due diligence and look at what's been provided, those numbers lock to the 9.9, and you can see what the forecast does with respect to what happens to your cash balances and reserves.
Let me make a comment, because I generate a lot of giggles in these budget meetings every year with the docks and the RVs and the PWCs. Let's throw RVs out, that's yours. I don't care about RVs, I do. But anyway, I throw a tirade and pitch a fit every single year. And I want to bring up the fact, because I've been receiving emails and communications, et cetera, and personal contacts regarding docks do not need to go up, which I argue against every single year, that 3%, because it is a self-supporting revenue-generating amenity, the only one that we have. Good. Let's go back a little bit. Back in the day, as we recall on this board, the way it was set up originally by Cooper was that the slip fees went to the general fund, and the POA financed the docks by giving them, I think it was 10% of that revenue. They then had to save it up in what they called a dock reserve. There was no way to ever purchase a dock with 10% of the revenues and maintenance and everything else. So during the last 6 years, we've formed, and this board approved, and thank you again very much, a Marina Advisory Committee, which got it into the same lockstep of the rest of the advisory committees and everything. So this is what I want to cover. Because we were generating that positive revenue, the Marina Advisory Committee's been making recommendations on improvements, enhancements, and other things, and then we're coming back to another 5%. And let me explain where the original 3% goes and this 5% to build back those reserves. In docks, we have put in OP and Kahiti Sea Dock in the last 3 years. That's over $1 million. We put in a wave attenuator at the yacht club. That was $400,000. We've replaced 30 PWC slips and added 30 plus more in the last 4 years, actually. We've replaced every steel cable. Let me back up. I do believe we've replaced every steel cable that had potential of rusting or was rusting, and we've had 3 instances of docks breaking loose because of that, with stainless steel cables to prevent that from happening. We've replaced all the electrical boxes and put in lights on top of those. We've replaced floats, rub rails, dock boards have all been replaced. We've improved the lighting, and thanks to the ladies that ride the PWCs, the River Chicks, they have replaced all of the rub rails on the yacht club and at the gas dock to keep their wave runners from bouncing underneath. We've added security cameras in all the parking lots and the docks. We've expanded parking at Tanasi Basin. We've improved the parking at Kahiti and expanded. We moved the end dock, and in doing so, we're able to move by Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency the no wake zone further out to the silos, which prevented damage to our docks and the property owners and the people that swim behind their docks in the evenings. We replaced the gas pumps, and we replaced the point of sales. That cost a ton of money to do all that, and there's many, many more things that these docks have improved on, like floats and et cetera, et cetera. But I just wanted to say that 3% that we were generating excess revenue was spent on all of those improvements, and we're rebuilding that reserves on that 5%. And I will be back next year, non-board members sitting out there walk up to the microphone and say, "How dare you raise me again for 3%? Okay?
So,
And we can hardly wait for that.
so without introducing it, we've already opened this up for board questions and comments. And so I would like to ask a question. If we could go back to the summary of the expenses, where we had the expenses going from 31.9 million in 2023 to 40.9, that one. So my question to Judy and Chet on this one is,
40.9, that's not expenses. It's gotta be, that's right. Okay, yeah,
that's not right?
Look at that. The revenue is $40.9 million. Let's see if that one is correct right there.
All right, see, when you were talking, your numbers you were saying weren't matching the screen, so I was
Okay,
wanting
yeah,
to be
that-
sure. So the number is not 40.9?
The revenue number is $40.9
Yeah.
million. The total cost of sales is 7.4.
Right.
The total expenses is 25.8, and the surplus is 7.7. This slide is correct for
Yeah,
the
let's-
2024 numbers, and if you look at the 2020.
So let's go forward.
Yes, that, let me double check that.
That one's correct,
That
it's
is also
identical.
correct as well.
What I would like to see,
Top expense lines, Ron.
yeah, what I'd like to see is the total expenses from 2023 compared to 2024 without food services.
Without food services?
Yes.
Okay, hold on one second, let me look at my number, because I know I have it. Yeah,
Go ahead and move forward with that.
the
Bring
total
up that in the deck.
expenses without food services are $22.9 million. Now that includes salaries and employee benefits, so you'd have to take the 22.9, 917. I'm an exact person. The total expenses without salaries and benefits, and that's without food services, is 12.3.
So what I'd like to get, what I'm curious is, what was the increase, per the budget, what's the increase in expenses, total expenses across the board from 23 to 24
$1.6 million.
without food services? So
Well,
it's-
yeah, $1.6 million.
So it's a million,
Right there,
1.578?
1.578, yes,
Okay,
sir.
so 7% increase
On
in
the first page in
in
your packet, yeah,
expenses.
that's correct.
Okay, so 7% increase in expenses compared to basically a
Yes,
5%
yes.
increase in
Correct.
our assessments.
Yeah, so without the impact of food services, we're looking at a 7% increase in expenses overall, and that's,
Okay,
yeah.
And the big item in that $1.6 million increase, there's a $376,000 increase in total services.
Yes, that was the four components that I said were the primary drivers of the increase for 2024 without food services, were the personnel costs, which is the training, operating supplies, which is primarily the horticulture, services, which is primarily our contract management arrangements, and the insurance costs. Those were the four primary drivers of that 7%.
okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, just, I want to stay on the services line,
Sure.
which is up $376,000. And services typically includes like your Jacobs Engineering. I'm assuming your accounting services would be in there?
Yes, that would include our audit and our tax return services in there, the collection expenses that are paid when we're trying to get our lots back in, and so we can start charging assessments again on those lots. It includes all of our legal expenses
Okay.
that we pay to our attorney for all the variety of things.
For next Wednesday, I'd like, or between now and then, I'd like to know what's driving that 376. I'm assuming it's Jacobs Engineering expenses for everything we're working on.
Not all of it. Some of it is based on the fact that we need contractors to come in and help very often with our water and sewer. As an example, we have lines in the community that are over 14 feet deep. We don't own a machine that can dig that deep.
Right,
So
right.
we have to go out and contract that.
And-
That's the biggest chunk, Steve.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the comparison between 23 and 24 is we're anticipating more work in that area, and that's why the
Correct.
expenses up.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's about $400,000 for, just under, for the sewer maintenance. Excuse me. Yeah, I have all those details.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the board?
Well, and I just can't help, just, you
Please
go
stop
back.
asking,
No, you
Marty.
go back when you had COVID going on. You could drive down to Lenore City and you see a sign on Wendy's or one of these burger places, a burger flipper was $8, $9 an hour. And now you see the same signs out there, $14, $16 an hour to do the same job. It relates to this too. We're not living on an island where we can go out and hire a $4.85 an hour public works person or a $16 an hour public works person, which we were doing at $18 an hour, and we were training them, certifying them, getting their license, and the surrounding utilities were scarving them up, and our cost was astronomical. That's where we've reduced that turnover significantly. And everybody just needs to realize that the cost of an employee is much more today than it ever has been. Joe, no, that's not true. Well, go look at the news and watch how the company I work for, I have no idea how they're going to do it, pay this wage that they're going to pay their delivery drivers, and watch the Writers Guild and GM and Ford and all of these. They're just astronomical. Somehow or another, that cost is going to be transferred back to us.
So anecdotally, I need to talk about something a little bit because it's been on my mind. It's something that I've been trying to do, and I'm currently blaming Joel Reed for this. But we've been looking at and trying to find ways, and we briefly mentioned that we want to qualify and quantify our customer service, and how do we go about that, and how do we, we say we're flat on our employees. Well, next year, I'd like to try and be sure that number's real. Maybe we can cut some staff. Maybe we don't cut staff. Maybe we have to increase it because we're not giving the level of customer service we should be giving. So all of those things need to be weighed out and make sure that everybody is pulling their weight. I can say with 100% confidence that in this budget process, every director and every staff member pulled their weight to get this done. This was not done in a vacuum, and they all had teeth in the game, and they all are now responsible and incredibly more educated in how we run this business. So in all of that, as we move forward next year, we will be looking toward using terms that probably about half of you will care less about, and that is we want to have a balanced scorecard. We want to go after how can we get better at what we do. And some of these things are already in place. It's not like I'm reinventing the wheel necessarily, but I want to fine tune it. I want to get everybody focused. And it comes from the board. The board will have to be at the top of this list to give us the direction they believe the community needs to go in and how we do that. And then I take that and run with it and translate that into the staff. But our goals moving forward is to get better and better every year at what we do and more refined at it.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, with that, before I open it up to public questions and comments, I guess I've got a few prepared remarks I want to make, primarily in light of questions and comments that we've gotten from prior years when we got to this point of the budget. So this is my fourth year going through this process, and as was stated before, what you see today is the culmination of many hours put in by POA staff and close to 100 residents that volunteer on the various advisory committees. And now finally, the Finance Advisory Committee and its recommendation to the board. All of these property owners have the ultimate goal of balancing spend to properly sustain our infrastructure and amenities while keeping property owner fees as low as possible. As you all know, the reality is we own our infrastructure that is now 35 plus years old. Prior to the focus on reserves, and that was about 4 years ago, there was very little attention given to addressing this aging infrastructure, primarily water and sewer. Sure, we had an R&M reserve, but that was primarily for ongoing maintenance as issues came up. There was really no focus on addressing the larger issues of an aging infrastructure and capacity planning for the larger population we now have. 4 years ago, after building the new Tokel Clubhouse and the Kahidi Community Center, our reserves were roughly $1 million. That compares to where we're at today of $18 million. Now, of that $18 million, $4 million is the Tenasseee insurance money, so say that $1 million now compares to the $14 million that we have in reserves. As you saw in this budget presentation, anticipated spend on infrastructure projects over the next several years is going to could take our reserve balance down to $3.3 million by the end of 2027. So I just want to So 14 million to 3.3 based on the infrastructure projects that we see that we need to do. So to the argument that, hey, we're on a fixed income and you guys are pricing me out of the community, I just want everybody to know that this issue has nothing to do with emotion or affordability and everything to do with sustainability. We all need to face that reality. Same issue is facing all businesses. Look at what just happened with the United Auto Workers last week. They negotiated a 25% increase, among other things, in their wages. So who do you think is going to pay for that? And what do you think the impact of that's going to be to all other commodities and services throughout the country? And that's what we're faced with. That's what, as everybody's been saying here, that's what drives up our labor costs and other costs. And certainly we need to keep looking at that to see what opportunities we have, but that's kind of the reality that we're facing. In addition to that, the cost to replace Tenacity keeps going up as time goes on. And these costs will likely not come down in the future. So to that end, Chet and the board keep looking for ways to finance some of this, so not all of it has to come out of our property owner pockets. We had examples of that this past year when Mitzi and her team worked with state and local government officials to secure $2.1 million in state funding for water and sewer projects. So that's $2 million that we don't have to come up with now. We need to find more things like that. We had the proposed buy-in fee to help offset some of our infrastructure costs. Certainly that it stalled, at least for now. We're also considering a water authority that could potentially qualify for more federal and state funding. So again, looking for ways that we can fund things that we have to do in this village that and hopefully necessarily won't come out of our pockets. So my plea is to everybody that's listening or people that are here is to please seek to understand these different proposed initiatives before throwing stones at them and trying to make them political, because that's not the intent at all. The intent is to, how do we make this better and more affordable for our property owners? So, but the bottom line is, as you've seen here, that unless and until other sources of revenue are found, all costs to run Tellico Village and maintain our infrastructure and amenities will need to be funded through assessments, user fees, and through our utility bills, water and sewer. Now, it's not all gloom and doom. I want to stress that we are in very good financial condition. We really are. But we just need to be sure that we're preparing adequately to sustain this community we call home into the future. So with that, I'll open it up now for public questions and comments. And the only guidelines that we'll have there is that to enable everyone that has a question or comment to speak, we're going to limit people to 3 minutes. John Arguelles, our Vice President, will be our timekeeper. But we're now open. So if anybody has any questions or comments, please come to the mic, state your name and your question. Thank you.
Hi, Ed Grolleman. I got a couple of questions, quick questions. On page 5 of 7 of the Board Reserves spending report, it shows $300,000 for Wellness Center back porch build-out. Is that a project going to happen this year, or because previously I've heard that was going to be extended till next year, but...
Well, part of this gets blamed on me. One of my initiatives as I built the budget was to tell everybody the only amenity that is getting updated this year, unless it is a life safety, was going to be Tenacity.
Okay.
However, in review with the board and everyone else, they felt that the extension of that back patio to give more room within the community center, there was something that we needed to move forward on, and so it was put back into the budget.
Okay, I just wanted to get clarification
Yep.
on that. The other thing is, I know that the restaurant budget is totally new to us. Can you explain a little bit how you came up with those numbers and stuff and staffing? Because we've never done a whole 4 restaurants. I know we own the Kahiti restaurant, but can we explain a little bit the process on that for people?
I will try. John Orr helped me a lot on this. We based the numbers off of Andy's actuals that he has given us, based upon Skylar's payroll reports that we were able to obtain, of course, as well. We originally thought there may be 10 to 15 folks that would be considered full-time, that we would need to offer benefits and be able to budget the benefits for. In this instance, once we got payroll reports, it's more like maybe 30 people that we went ahead and budgeted for. So we kind of do feel like our salaries are overstated, and hopefully we'll save a lot of money in that area. At this time, Russell's back there. Russell, is it 60-something total employees that have actually filled out the application? Or was it 60% of the total? 70. So 70 total employees have filled out applications.
Okay.
Out of those, maybe 20 to 25 actually filled out paperwork for benefits, so it's a lot less than what we had anticipated.
1 minute left. 1 minute left.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. As far as supplies, restaurant supplies, things of that nature, we did put a little extra in each of the locations for promotional type things and, just discounts that we want to be able to do, try new ideas, new events, like at Topeka, for instance, you and I talked, we put a 3-compartment sink in down
Okay.
there. We're going to try to do some food offerings down there, try to run a commissary. So there's a lot of areas where we're going to try new things. And so you and I can get together if you want to, Ed, and
Okay.
our next committee meeting, is next week. We're going to use you to help us with a survey for the property owners anyway, so we can kind of look at it line by line when John's back in town.
Okay, one quick question. I noticed on page 6 or 7, not this year, but next year and following year, there's a lot of money in for Keedy water and waste improvements. Have that study been completed? And I've not seen that study any place yet. Has that been completed at this point, or are those just estimates for further out?
That has not been completed. It is partially, but not complete yet. And we're, some of those numbers are, I won't say guesses, but educated guesses as we move forward from what we've seen so far.
Okay, thank you.
Mitzi, the other thing you had on your food service, you have data from AWE on sales volume. You've got John Orr and other experts tell you that a third of your revenue goes to cost of goods, a third goes to labor, a third goes to overhead. So based upon data from actual sales from AWE, you got a pretty good benchmark as to what the volume should be. So you take the third, and we tweaked it a little bit because we're going to try different things to increase customer satisfaction and variety in the restaurants. So that's how you get that number.
Marty, I just noticed something looking at this reserve spending report, which obviously I didn't see before this morning. We have money scheduled for meter replacement next year, but not in any of the out years. So
Two reasons for that. We want to find out if what we're doing is actually making a difference in terms of cost as well as water usage. And as we study and move forward, that we'll begin to build a budget. As you notice, we're not putting in all of them. We're only putting in 1,000.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
But one way or the other, we will replace water meters in the out years.
That would be the hope, yes.
So,
I have a quick question. Teresa Reed, and I belong to that guy Joel Reed. Anyhow, thank you all for what you do. We do. I know Joel and I speak up a lot, but we really do know this is a lot of time and energy and effort for you guys. So thank you for what you do. But I want to ask a question about the reserve study. You referenced the reserve study, and you're using that as driving your train some, but back in October, I think it was, at the board meeting, you all said you wouldn't release the reserve study because it was riddled with mistakes. So I guess I'd like to know if we can see the reserve study that's driving your train in these numbers, and/or do you have a business plan, something that might be like a Gantt chart showing the jobs that you have on the docket that could correspond to these numbers in the budget?
I believe it is now online. Stop me if I'm wrong, Beth, but I believe we did put it online, and we did make some adjustments in those areas where we felt that there was numbers that weren't quite accurate, for lack of a better term. And also, we've updated them. Each year, they have to be updated, and so that's also part of the review. is what are we changing in the reserve study? Because one of the big ones is going to be, as Steve pointed out, when Tenacity is done, it no longer is, it's now in the reserve study. It has to be put in. And so that's a living, breathing document. But yes, I believe it is online.
Okay, good. And then the projects that you're doing, do you have some kind of, for a lack of a better term, a Gantt chart? I mean, that's what I'm used to seeing is year one, we're going to do this project. It's expected to be a 3.5-year project. This is the expense along the way, or it's a 6-month project, that might correspond to the outlay of funds on the budget.
At this time, I think we go and review those every year at budget time and then lay out those terms and see what we can do and what we can't do. I need to be really clear. When I say we brought up the budget 5%, that's as far as we could go. And there were other things that got cut, that got moved off, that got pushed out, or just taken out completely because we can't do them.
Well, I'd like to ask then for, again, when I was working, I was very low level. I was a line item on somebody's huge budget. But, so reading these budgets is a challenge for me. But I know you frequently talk about jobs that are, on the docket. So if you guys could, I guess, quantify that for someone like me to see this year we're expecting to do boom, boom, and boom. In the next, the next 5 years, we're doing these 3, and then this one, and then this one's, just to kind of.
Not to interrupt, but that is in the reserve spending report that's in here for the
That
next
is
Yes, I was
5
going to
years.
say, if you go to page 6, top line,
However,
Okay.
it's got a sewer tank man lift station. It's a placeholder for now, but it shows 500,000 in '24.
Yeah.
3.1 million, 25, 3.2. So it is laid out to the best of our ability
Okay.
now going forward. You will not see a project number.
Okay.
You will not see a detailed Gantt chart. What you will see is a forecast of what we expect to spend next year and our best guess as to what we see going forward, which builds into that depletion of cash reserves down to about less than 5 million.
Okay. Thank you very much.
oh, come on, really? That's it? That's all you got? There we go, Joel. I knew I could bait you into coming out.
So, Joel Reed, been a Tellico Village resident almost 10 years. So thank you. I'm going to echo what Teresa said. Thank you very much. It's really great to see this kind of level of detail and presentation. Really appreciate all the work and energy that's gone into it. Chet, great summary. Marty, you too. Really heartfelt, and I like what you're saying in the future. However, I have a recommendation for future presentations like this. First, I think you owe it to us as the audience to give us a business plan presentation. I know a lot of it's driving this, but things like what is the forecast volume that we're looking at? What projects, Therese brought that up a couple of times, but let me get a little more specific. So your projects should have SMART criteria, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, trackable. You should have timelines, you should have cost and resources needed to support it, and you should also have desired outcomes. So when we talk about things like what are your cost down initiatives, right? What are your plans for that? I don't see anything. This is a $40.9 million in revenue that's coming in next year, $40.6 million in expenses, and no offense, but there should be a business plan that shows this and articulates this. Quality improvement initiatives, what are they? Employee training development, you mention it, don't see it. How are you going to do that? Developing and establishing KPIs. What are our targets? How do we measure efficiency? How do we know if we're successful? These are things I don't see in this. All I see is a budget that we're going to say, that's our metric. There's so much more to running a business, and this at $40.9 million in revenue and $40.5 million in expenses, and I'm underwhelmed. And I don't mean that offensively, but I'm just telling you, this is a big business. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts. I'd like to see a lot more, as a resident, actually, you consider us to be like the customer. I'd like to see a heck of a lot more going on. Every presentation should cover 3 components: do, know, feel. Let me tell you what I feel like coming out of here.
1 minute.
We're going to take care of the expenses, right? We're going to raise 5%. We're going to do our maximum increase, and then we're going to go ahead and take care of the assets. That's good, but it's not good enough. I'd like to walk out of here feeling confident that as the fiduciaries of our money, that you're doing everything you can to optimize and make this place the best place possible, not only for the residents, but for our visitors and for our employees. I think there's a lot of that going on, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice by not sharing those details or on a very concise level for us. I apologize for going over.
No, and good, Joel, you're good, and good to see you in here. And you're exactly right. And all of us have been in that same situation that you're from, talking about this. This is not the grisly details. The grisly details happen in rolling up these numbers. So when you want to look at what's driving the golf revenue or what's driving the project or what, it's all been done. As Brad stood up and talked about the PSAC people, there's a lot of money in that.
Right.
And their plans are there, their studies there, the timelines are there, the Gantt charts are there, all that stuff is there. But to sit here this is a presentation to the board and the public of what's coming, to go into the minutia and the grisly details would take the rest of the year. We've been, what'd you say, 100 people, 56 hours? You take that and put it in here for review, we'll be here to the end of December.
Yeah, I think I mentioned concise, but your point's well taken.
Well,
But when I come to
what you mentioned was the details are lacking, and you can't have concise and lacking details together, or can you? I haven't figured that one out yet.
Well, okay.
So I think the reality of it, and just for a second here.
Sure.
If you look at the reserve spending plan, I mean, that identifies the different projects that are anticipated and the associated cost amounts. The way it works is none of those projects are kicked off until they're brought to the board and approved. And at that time, there's more details shared. And that's been consistent with how it's always happened since I've been on the board anyway, that anytime any project before it's approved by the board, even though it's in the budget, that's when you see the details of it that you're speaking to, not during the budget. The budget is saying, look, we know we need to do these projects, and based on the information we have today, we have a lot of detail on some of them, not as much on others, but that's coming before the board will approve it. So it's working, Joel, as I would expect it to.
Okay. Yeah, I think that what I'm talking about is more than just the reserves and those kind of initiatives, the capital replacements or repairs. I'm talking about how do we innovate? How do we, reduce our expenses? How do we improve our customer service? All those things are measurable items that we could have in a business plan. So when we come to the monthly meetings in the future, we can look and say, how are we doing the plan? I showed you when I presented our budget, this is what we're going to do for next year. And here's our scorecard on how it moves forward. Chet said something very wonderful at the end, saying that's what the future looks like. I think that a business plan to support that scorecard, to help us to treasure what we measure, if you will, and to inspect, not just expect results, would be wonderful.
Can't argue with it, because I come from a business background, as you have, and typically you'd have the overlay business plan. Here's what we're doing with our HR, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Not to make an excuse, but reality. This is our third year in a row of having a different CFO. This is really the first full-time Chet's had to do a budget. This is the first time the staff has ever done a zero-based budget. They didn't sit down and say, well, my expenses for operating supplies were $250,000 and they're going to go up 6%. Let's put that in the budget. So I take your comments to heart. That is something that I'd like to see us get to.
Okay.
But this is a path we're on, I believe. I believe Chet wants to get there, Judy wants to get there, but we got to step back. This place used to be run like a mom and pop store 7 years ago.
Okay.
And we've exploded, and we've had a lot of change. And I'm just grateful that we've been able to get the reserves where they are in order to allow us to do what we need to do to take care of the infrastructure. But thank you for your comments.
Yes.
So, Joel, you can go ahead and sit down, but I'm going to talk to something you were going to say. Yeah, just sit down, Joel. I know there's more coming.
Sit down, Joel.
No, my intent is that, and I probably will now talk about something that's a little on the side. I believe I have the best staff in my 20 years of managing property. Today, I have the best staff I've ever had to be able to do that. And now that that's in place, all of the things that Joel just talked about is what we're going to attack. I've been living under a 30-year shadow, and I'm just now crawling out from under that shadow. And I'm trying to do the very best I can for the community, and that is always where my heart is to do the best I can for the community. Contrary to popular belief, I do live here. And it's important for everyone, including myself. But I take Joel's comments specifically to heart, and as we move forward into the new year, I'm going to talk about, here's the new project we're working on and how we're going to evaluate it and where we're going to get to and how we're going to get there. And to Marty's point, all of the new projects as we go into 2024 are going to have to be evaluated that way. They're going to have a business plan. Yep, we're going to put in X. And to do that, we're going to have to do these steps to get there. And this is our date, our timeline, when we anticipate spending that money, all of the above.
I'm Tom McPhee. I don't have a question. I just want to go back to the food services budget for next year, because I've heard a lot of questions on how did it get there and do we trust the numbers. When we've had Kahiti numbers, POA numbers for 6 years, good. And what's in the food services budget as a percentage of sales for labor, gross profit, expenses match almost exactly the numbers that we've been running at Kahiti for the last 6 years. So I have a lot of faith in the people that put that budget together for next year.
Well,
Okay.
since I'm hearing the crickets, my buddy, so. No, and it got touched upon, throughout this presentation from multiple people, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. Chet and Judy gave the bulk of the presentation today, but all the other presenters talked about the number of people involved in the Finance Advisory Committee, all of the other advisory committees. It was the property owners that drove this to that presentation. And as we've discussed this week, and I think it's, and I won't be around to make the decision, nor will Rick, but I think it's a very good idea to give the impression of not the staff's budget, because they presented, but the treasurer of the POA board, the finance advisory, and perhaps a representative from each one of the advisory committees to give this presentation in the following years. That's one of the changes we need to look at. Because no matter how you do it, you watch it on video, you watch it here, the idea that somebody can perceive that Chet is smashing this budget down our throats is not true. We came up with this budget, and he argued for points, and we argued for points, and everybody had their input, and the slugfest ended, and we put it on a piece of paper, and you're seeing it today. This is our budget. This is not the POA staff's budget, property owners.
So I guess I'll close this just by saying the rest of the process is, so the board and everybody will have a chance to review the details of this, and then at next week's board meeting, we will endeavor to approve it. So depending on questions, comments, whatever that the board may have on it or others, and then, but that is the plan, that it will be then approved in our board meeting next week so that we can move on from there. With that,
One other thing, let me ask, and this was a great suggestion from Beth, let me give her credit. So if anybody wants to come whack on anybody, she asked. I think, and it is very prudent, is there a committee member, recreation, golf, finance, communication, public works, anybody wants to come up to this microphone and make a comment on what your involvement or how you saw the involvement of the process? If you don't, I understand that as well. Huh? Oh, all the committee members to stand up, property owner committee members.
I'd also, don't go down, don't sit down. I like all the staff to stand up that's here as well. Skylar, don't sit down.
there you go.
These are the people who did the work.
I think it's about.
Okay, with that, I think we're done here. So we'll end this meeting and we'll see everybody next Wednesday. Thank you.